Kia ora everybody, welcome to our webinar. We're going to start, we like to start and close our wānanga or our gatherings with a karakia. Karakia is a blessing. It helps to set the tone and create the space that we are wanting to make for our session. So, given that we are so close to Mātariki, we're going to do a karakia which is for Mātariki. Manawa mai te pūtanga o Mātariki, manawa mai te ariki o te rangi, manawa mai te mātahi o te tau, whano, hara mai te toki, haumi e, hui e, taiki e. Welcome everyone to the fourth session of our global webinar series, where we unpack and explore re-indigenising the many aspects of design. This webinar is a collaboration between British Council, the University of Exeter, Concurrency and IDIA. In previous sessions, we have explored physical space, global systems, and indigenising fashion and entrepreneurship. Now, before we open up our kōrero to our incredible panellists who are storytellers, Johnson wasn't able to make it tonight, so please allow me to welcome my co-host for the evening, Lucy. Lucy, Kare, would you like to introduce yourself?
Kia ora, Keita. Kia ora. Oh. Kia ora koutou. Ko waio. He uri tēnei no te Aotearoa ki Waikawa. E tipu ake a hau ki te tai tokoro no Pakaraka. E noho ana hau ki te whanganui a Tara. Ko Lucy Shan tōku inga. Kia ora koutou, my name is Lucy. I'm absolutely thrilled to be your co-host this evening. My people come from the very top of the South Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand, on my mother's side, but I grew up in the Bay of Islands, which is the very tippity top of the North Island of Aotearoa, and I live in Wellington, here, Te Whanganui a Tara. My background is in creative arts, glam sector, service design, Indigenous service design, and Indigenous storytelling. And it's wonderful to be a part of the Indigenising design kaupapa. I was here from somewhere near the beginning, and it's been really wonderful to see this burgeoning community of international Indigenous practitioners who are passionate about storytelling, who are passionate about their crafts and their artisanal practices, and passionate about telling their stories through their means. So it's an absolute pleasure and privilege to be here this evening, and I'd like to hand it over back to you, Keita. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Lucy, thank you very much. So I'll introduce myself. Some of you may have seen me before, as I've co-hosted alongside Johnson, but ko ai he uri au no ngā hauewha whakapapau ki te tainui te aroa tūhoi Ngāti Manua, hei te taho tōku papa, hei te taho tōku mama, ko Ngāti Tūwharitua Ngāti Pikiao, Ngāti Tahu me Ngāti Whāo. So, middle of the North Island is where I lay claim to. That's where I grew up. I spent time in my youth in places like Ruatahuna, Rotorua, Murupara, Taupo. I moved to Wellington some time ago, where I fell in love with service design. I also fell into service design. It wasn't a plan. I kind of just tripped one day and found myself being involved in service design mahi. The things that make me really happy are finding out what makes other people happy and hearing from them, their journeys and their stories and their learnings. I love sharing learnings, and I love hearing from people about the stuff that makes their eyes shine and their hearts happy. And we are very, very fortunate tonight. We have some wonderful panellists who will be sharing their stories with us and telling us much about their journey to where they are now. So you're aware of how this goes. I'm going to give them some time to talk to you about who they are and where they're from. In the past, we have often asked each member a question and then let them talk about the question, and then we kind of move to the next panelist with a different question. We're changing that up because we've found that actually the best kōrero comes from the opportunity to share, to wānanga, to ngau here, or to chew over and talk and chew those concepts over together. So that's the approach that we're going to take tonight. We are looking to, actually, it might be morning for some of you, aroha mai. We are looking to also make sure that we have some time for questions and answers. So if you have a question, please pop it in the question and answers tab. You will see that on your right at the very top there, you'll see a Q&A. If you pop a question in there, we have people who in the background who will be collating those questions, pulling them together and making sure that we have some good questions to ask. Now, aroha mai, if your question doesn't get answered, we have a limited amount of time in this session, so we might not be able to get through them. What we do like to do, though, is to send the questions from our panel to our panels and get them to answer them, and then we can share those back when we share the actual video itself. All right, that's enough kōrero from me. Let me hand you over to our very first panelist. I'm going to get Amber to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about who she is. Kei a koe, kare.
Tēnā a koe. Kia ora koutou, ko Amber Taylor tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei no ngā te whātua te raroa ngāpui, ngā te mutinga me te Aotearoa, e tupu ake o I Tāmaki Makaurau, he manahautu o I Indigenising, no reira tēnā koutou katoa. So, hello everyone, I'm Amber. I hail from the top of the North Island here in New Zealand. So through my mama's side, most of that top half of Taitokiro, I have whakapapa too, and then coming down the west coast into the Taranaki region, Wanganui region is where my papa's roots lay. So a bit of a spread there. I myself currently I've grown up in Auckland. I still currently live in Auckland. I absolutely love it here. I don't think I will ever leave. However, who knows? Should never say never, right? I am a mama. I have 2 grown kids and a moko, so a grandchild who is 4, my grandson. I currently live with my partner we've got a little lifestyle block, so a couple of beasts there, very rural living, which we are very lucky to. I'm a high school dropout. I had my first son at 18, and I didn't actually go to university until I became an adult. So once I got into university, I actually ended up staying there for 20 plus years because I ended up working at that university and climbing my way up to a commercialisation role. So for 12 years before starting the company, I worked in commercialisation, working with our researchers and our professors and looking at tech transfer in that space. And then it was in 2018 when I started Indigenising, a digital tech company, which is grown from a grassroots company currently exporting global. I'll leave it there because we can talk a little bit more about mahi later on, but great to be here. Thank you for joining us, whether it's the morning or the evening for you. Nō reira tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora for that. Amber, that was a beautiful introduction. Lovely to hear where you're from, where your people are from, and your journey so far. I'm going to offer Riham the same opportunity. Riham, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sabah al-khair. Hello, everyone. I would like to begin with this. ونحن نحب الحياة إذا ما استطعنا إليها سبيلا ونرقص بين شهيدين نرفع مئذنة للبنفسج بينهما أو نخيلا. We love life whenever we can. We dance and throw up a minaret or raise palm trees for the violets growing between 2 martyrs. We love life whenever we can. I wanted to begin this talk and my introduction with a poem by the renowned Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish to acknowledge what it feels like to be a Palestinian these days, our deep mourning, anger, sadness, and love for life. And to acknowledge the multifaceted layers we navigate in our lives, in our daily lives, like love, politics, gender, resistance, and the aspiration for liberation. And I start this because I am Riham Isaac, that's my name, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist from Palestine. And I work in themes of gender, politics, and also storytelling, but in multidisciplinary forms. So I link between video and between music and between dance and between theater and installations to create a story to the audiences. I believe in the transformative power of performance and storytelling, as it can have an active agent and an urgent response to what is going on, especially against colonial violence. It's a radical act of liberation in the face of colonial systems. My journey into theater, inspired by my early experiences in my hometown, Bethlehem, which is a town near to Bethlehem. This is where I grew up. My passion for performance was really aligned by a lot of my cultural heritage and the resilience that we hold as people. And it was also during my involvement in the drama club at the university in Palestine that I really discovered my passion for acting and for dancing and music and all of these semiotic references. And I would like to leave it there because my work involves doing my own solo projects and research. But at the same time, I'm also involved in the context of where I am in Palestine, where I was, because now I am at the University of Exeter. I'm in Exeter. I'm based doing my practice PhD here. But my work involved a lot of community work and working with different training programs and interventions within the Palestinian cultural fabric. Yes, I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Riham. Really appreciate you taking the time to introduce yourself. Also to both Amber and to Riham, thank you very much for sharing your reo with us, your language. It's wonderful to hear te reo Māori being spoken, but also to be able to hear other languages as well. So thank you very much, Riham. Every time you say I'm from a little town not too far from Bethlehem, there's part of me that goes, that's where Jesus was born. Like it's a mythical place on the other side of the world, and you get to call that very close to home. So there's a part of me that gets quite excited. So thank you for sharing that. Now, just quickly, we have some AI note takers in the room. I just wanted to make sure that anyone who is using an AI note taker, that you are using that, that you've ensured the settings are just for personal use only, that you're not planning on sharing your notes with everybody on this webinar. So can we just make sure that our AI note takers are for personal use only? Kia ora for that. Alrighty, let's get into the miti kōrero. So we've held 3 panels so far. So this is the 4th panel in a series of 6. And across each of the panels that we've held in prior sessions, we've noticed several commonalities in the way that Indigenous practitioners engage, how they work and how they create. Some of those include intergenerational thinking and reciprocity. So these are really common in Indigenous cultures when working with communities. We've also heard about the importance that communities play in the mahi or the work that we do, and how it's important to engage respectfully and authentically. And often as practitioners, we are asked to do this on behalf of other people. We also recognise the role that connection to place, space, whenua or land, and the environment, the interconnected thinking, plays when we're collaboratively making things or telling stories alongside our community. What we're interested in hearing a little bit more about from our panellists is, what are your experiences when working with communities? How do you make space for them and the connections to land and sky, and all that sits in between that? So I'll let that question percolate for a moment, and then I will hand to Amber for your opportunity to answer that question.
So before I answer the question, I'll quickly explain a little bit what we do, and what you should see playing is a little bit of a snippet of some of the mahi that Indigenising has created. So it's a mixture of virtual reality and augmented reality that we work with. We combine that with geolocation tech, AI, and we gamify experiences. So we are a full stack development company. We are on a mission to flood the world with Indigenous knowledge, stories, culture, and languages. And we do that using immersive technology. So what you're seeing playing at the moment is a virtual reality game that we built, which focuses on the journey for Indigenous and the logo. That's actually my mountain there, where Mount Taranaki, where I am from. So that was very exciting. This character here that you're looking at, the digital character Manu, he was the first ever augmented reality gaming character that was created in the world that was fully bilingual, te reo Māori as well as English. So we won a lot of awards for Manu, and that really put us on the pathway for creating other journeys and the platforms that have followed since creating Manu. Manu's a real special character for us because when we came up with the concept of Manu, he was based on the Pokemon Go game. So I don't know how many gamers I've got in the audience, but if you're familiar with Pokemon Go, you run around the city and you collect different Pokemon. At that time, I met my business partner, Dr. Isaac Warbrick, who I actually co-founded the company with. He was noticing a lot of his friends, older gentlemen, come home from work every day. Normally they'd sit on the couch and they'd watch TV, but all of a sudden they were chasing Pokemon. And so when we met, I was having a talk with him around growing up urban Māori. So that disconnect from your home ties or your where your iwi are based or where you come from. I never experienced that. If you were listening in my introduction, I talked about my mum being from the North Island, my dad being top of the North Island, my dad being from Taranaki. I grew up in Auckland. So there was a little bit of a disconnect there for me, which we now call urban Māori. So once we started having a bit of a jam session together and just open talk about our experiences, we came to the conclusion that why can't we have our own version of Pokemon Go, but make it Indigenous? So use our stories, use our content, use our characters, use our language. So that's really where Other Journey started. Since then, we've built our other platforms. The one that you're seeing at the moment is a trailer from our Tūwhiri platform. Tūwhiri was built to scale. We built Tūwhiri during lockdown. It's an augmented reality storytelling platform which enables multiple iwi right across Aotearoa, or when we're working internationally with other Indigenous communities, to be able to tell the stories that they want in their own way. The beautiful thing with Tūwhiri is we built a reward system that underpins the entire infrastructure, which means if you're playing the game in a local area or local community and you're earning rewards from that game, you can then redeem those rewards in locally owned Indigenous shops or spaces where they might be on our platform. So that was something else we were really proud of. So back to the question that you know a little bit about what we do. How do we work with community? Well, for us, it starts with listening. We co-design everything that we've built to date. So whether that co-design is working with local communities or school-age children, or whether we're working on marae or with iwi or tribes, and then whether we're working with whānau themselves, every piece of content that we create is designed around the story that they tell us. So we're not reading books, we're not taking information that's currently online, we're going straight to the knowledge holders, learning that story from them, working out with them, how does that look in a digital space? In the communities that we work with, there isn't a lot of knowledge. Well, we're working with an outer community. And so our kaumātua, our elders, don't really necessarily understand the technology or the implications of having some of their rich narratives that haven't really been shared wider than their own whānau actually are publicly available in technology. So for us, it's making sure that they understand first and foremost what the the impact is on moving some of that kōrero into technology, and then how do we respectfully work with the stories that they're sharing us so that it can be used within the tech that we use or the tech that we're building. So yeah, for us, it's always about listening, creating safe spaces for storytelling, for sharing, and then for understanding and teaching as well in terms of the technology space. Did I answer the question? I can keep going, but
yeah, you answered that question perfectly. It's the something you said there, like really resonated for me. The sound of the story being told by kaumātua queer, by different voices in different reo, with different nuances, is such a wonderful opportunity. And I think taking that kind of outside of our whānau, so you have mum and dad who tell stories and they tell it in a certain way, but actually taking that to the world, there is a lot of beauty and a lot of power in that. So really awesome to hear that's the approach that you take and the respect that you hold for the kōrero, because it's often, you're right, it's people are unaware of the impact. Suddenly my voice goes from all our stories, and stories hold, they hold messages, they hold really important morals and values, right? And those are now being shared outside of just your whānau. So yes, the other part of the question was, when you think about, so you have your communities and you make space, but there's also that connection to everything wider. And I think your platforms like Manu, for example, when I first saw it, I was like, this looks really amazing. And Tūwhiri, which is again going into the environment and going into places, really important, special places. How did you approach that mahi?
For us, that reconnection piece was always right there up front. And I guess it really stemmed from for myself growing up urban Māori and not really knowing the stories of home, like my cousins who come from home and still live at home know. And so you feel, even though you're not fully disconnected, you still feel a little bit shy or whakamā going back home and re-engaging, because there's still that little piece of missing information or something missing in you. So for us, that reconnection back to place was hugely important, because with me being based here in Auckland, I'm just using myself for an example, but generally we were thinking, if someone's based in Auckland but their home lies in Taranaki, you don't get down there all the time or as often as you might. But what if we enabled them to be able to learn the stories of the area that they live in? And what does connection in that space looks like? So it's not necessarily my own whānau stories that I'm learning, but I am learning the stories of the land that I now occupy and now live on and work in. And I guess for us, creating that space, and Manu's the perfect example. I'll tell you a story. When we launched Manu, we held a big community event. Well, not us, it was a community organisation that held it, but we activated the space using our Manu character. And the feedback that we got from a few different people, non-Māori, was how much more they had grown up in the area for 20, 30 odd years, migrated to New Zealand, grew up in the area that we had activated. They had no idea how much of a rich source the awa that ran down the back of their houses was to the people who used to occupy that space, or maybe currently still do. So that particular awa was heavily polluted. It smelled, you couldn't really use it. But because we were able to tell the story from an iwi perspective or hapu perspective and get them to understand what that land was actually used for, because we augmented it, you could see what it once looked like, it gave them a greater sense of wanting to take care of that particular awa. So we got messages after that launch of people, non-Māori and Māori, just saying, we didn't really understand the significance of this piece of waterways and would love to see it return to how it was. And so they started engaging in community plantings, community cleanup days. And I think that kind of impact for me when we talk about connection to the whenua, that's what really, that makes my heart explode.
Emma, that's amazing. That is such a cool story. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's another sort of story that, and I don't know if this is the case, but there's part of me that thinks that, you know, a lot of our tamariki, our tamaiti, our children, you know, seeing manu, for example, seeing somebody who looks like them, you know, in a game would have had such an impact. You know, because it's that we don't often get to see people who look like us, you know, in games. So was that something that you had experience with?
Yeah, that's actually one of my favourite comments. Isaac and I were showcasing manu at a different event, and it was with primary school age children. So they're around 6 to 8 year olds that we were really talking about the tech, introducing them to manu. And honestly, the most beautiful comment we received is a young tama boy. He was sitting in the front row and he's like putting his hand up and he's like, fire, fire. So like basically miss. And I was like, oh yeah. And he goes, he looks just like me. And stuff, and just like the sheer amazement on his face that we now had a Māori character, young character in a style that kids are engaging with anyway, or designed using that animation style, but he was Māori and he could kōrero Māori, and he starts with a pepeha. So that for us was really special, having that impact, and that was going back to 2018 was when we launched Manu.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And I realise that I've hogged all of the questions, and there's another co-host, and she might have some questions. Oh, my Lucy, would you like to jump into the kōrero as well?
Oh, absolutely. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe, Amber, for your wonderful kōrero. I love how you've really demonstrated the power of storytelling, and it's through power into activation, into kind of galvanizing people into taking action and doing things that are better for whenua. So demonstrating the importance of reconnection to place is very powerful message. I also realize I'd love to invite Riham into this kōrero as well. And so Riham, I'd love to pose the same question to you, if that's all right. Would you care to share with us some of your experiences with working with communities, and how you make space for them and the connections to land and sky and all that sits in between?
Thank you. And there's a lot. And thank you, Amber, as well, for this amazing sharing and the project that you are leading with the community. I think in my work as a storyteller, as a performance artist, as someone who works with innovative, I think, disciplines and a little bit challenging for my community, I always see it as producing this kind of multidisciplinary performances and work is transformational as well for the audiences or for the public that I work with. So I like to challenge my audience rather than making it very easy for them to digest. So that's one of the things that I like to work as an artist. But I also, at the same time, I like to make it a little, like in my head, it's like, as well, it's accessible for my local audience. I would like it to be also for diverse audiences. So this is in my personal kind of like as a performance artist creating my own performances. But at the same time, part of my my work is leading, as I said, leading community projects or training programs to emerging artists, to established artists, but also to communities who probably or to anyone who is interested about performance and storytelling and theater. and they don't have to have any background of art. So I have developed a lot of tools throughout my years of practice, but I kind of like, I have this toolbox and I go with it to different communities and to different spaces, I would say, and see when I open that box, what kind of tools I will use with this community. And I really like what Amber said, is about listening, it's about being there, it's just about sharing those tools with them of storytelling, whether it's going and searching for the story, whether it's a song that they want to say, whether it's a poem, whether it's a video, whether it's an installation, whatever they like to work with. So I offer them my tools very openly, and I listen to them and I take to them and I learn from them. So I think this is the core aspect of my method, I would say, when I go to communities. Essentially, when you're talking about place and like between the place and the skies, this is very inspiring to me, because a big part of my practice as an artist is working with spaces and public spaces, or any space. Like sometimes I tell my for example, like my participants, what's the difference between a space, a place, you know? So like, is a space, does it give you a meaning, or a place, it gives you something else, or home, or a land? And then, you know, like, I really like to look at spaces as they hold narratives and they hold stories as well. So I always intrigued by their potential to be like re-examined, retold, reimagined, and how it could, you know, make this kind of platform of sharing between different people. It would be great to share this video, actually.
هاي الورشة ورشة فن أداء في الأماكن العامة بالتعاون مع المجلس البريطاني هون في القدس. كيف إحنا ممكن نشتغل بالمكان العام أو أي مكان تاني غير مكان المسرح، وكيف إحنا بنأثر عليه وكيف هو بيأثر علينا. حبيت إنه أشتغل مع فنانين، مع طلاب بيشتغلوا بالفن أو بدرسوا بالفن. المشتركين صراحة والمشتركات رائعين ورائعات، كل حدا فيهم جاي من مجال مختلف وكل حدا حابب يجرب.
تجربتي بهاي الورشة هي كانت الأدوات، فحسيت إنه ضافت لي الأدوات لأنه هاي كانت عندي غايبة. أظن ضافت لي الورشة جرأة وحرية أكتر بالحركة، يعني صرت مرتاحة مع جسدي أكتر.
من الورشة هاي تعلمت التخطيط، تعلمت أكتر من إشي عن الفن.
فن الأداء بشكل خاص هو تفاعل فوري مع الجمهور، فالجمهور دائما في استجابة معهم للعمل تاعك.
Thank you so much for sharing this video. I think it came also in the right moment, and I can speak a lot about it. I mean, this was in Jerusalem, so this maybe the video can give you a little bit insight about about my place, my homeland, but also to give you the context, because Jerusalem is kind of it's not an easy place to live in or to navigate in. It's so these artists who live in Jerusalem, it's kind of it's a difficult situation politically, let's say. So we have to keep that in the back of our heads, that despite all of these challenges that we face in our daily lives as Palestinians, like as artists, as storytellers, as workers, and like I coming from Bethlehem, which is this biblical story and this place where it comes into your head into like Christmas, which is really beautiful during Christmas times, but it's all like I am, it's all surrounded by checkpoints and the wall. And then if I want to go to Jerusalem, I can't actually enter Jerusalem without a permission. So personally for me as well, like to have that context that we are creating all of these stories together, and we are creating art, and we are still wanting to tell our stories in our own way and to reclaim it in our own way. Make that kind of work a little bit more than just like, oh yes, I'm just working in that space or that place. Yeah, I don't know. I'll open it for your interventions now, and I'll speak more about it if you want.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Riham. I think it's vital that we touch on, obviously, the very dire context in which that particular part of the world is facing at the moment. And I think you're touching on the healing power of stories, and particularly when it comes to reclaiming stories in places and spaces that are meaningful to us. And I was just wondering if you would like to share some more about how the reclamation of stories has helped people, maybe through reconnecting to others or reconnecting to places or their own histories.
Yeah, this is a very good question. I think it's about, first, as I said, like it's about really opening up the doors for the participants to feel like this is a story that I want to say. So what I do in my methods is like I work first with the body as a space. So I start with the body, what it wants to say, and then I reach out to the space, and then we start realizing what is the space and what kind of potential it holds to you, and what kind of stories it holds to us. And then I experiment with different tools or like ways that they want to tell that story in that space, whether it's from that space or taking a piece from that space. And of course, it will always have those layers of where you are, the environment where you are in, and just going out on those spaces and trying to be like in that particular workshop, it was 8 artists coming from different backgrounds, different discipline backgrounds as well, and they were like we were having like 3 months of a residency together, and it was an open flat platform for us to experiment of what kind of work we want to say for our community. And it doesn't have to be a big statement. So I really wanted to like reach out to what they want to say. So we had different stories. We had someone who wanted to rebel a little bit from the community. There was someone who was like a little bit, oh, there is a space that I feel a little bit, I can't go there because it's surrounded by military, or it's surrounded by, like all the time cameras and people watching me and inspecting me. So she did something where she filmed it. She was not comfortable to do the performance there, but she filmed herself there by peeling an orange. And oranges is very symbolic for us as Palestinians, because it had, in 1948, when the Nakba started, it had an impactful, like Jaffa and Jerusalem, and like most of those places were just filled with orange trees that were peeled off from their roots. So like oranges means a lot to us as Palestinians. So the connection to the land meant a lot. And for her was just taking that orange and going to that space and peeling that and filming herself, where she felt a little bit maybe isolated in that space that she felt belonged to, was a reclamation, was a point where it's just like, I'm here, I'm there. But then she filmed herself and showed us this video. So we find ways to tell our stories, even if it's not a direct kind of storytelling, but it's a way of like exchange between that space and us. It was a very moving, this particular workshop was a very moving experience for me and for the participants, because there was always this question of what can I do in that space and what I cannot do in that space, and will it be danger or will it not be danger? So how can we find creative ways as well to still tell our stories and to be also true to what we want to say, you know, like it doesn't have to be all the time political, but if it comes political, everything is political, like gender also stories is political, then we just let it be, and we let this, we just, yeah, what I'm trying to say is just like, I like to follow the process and to just like go with their creativity and open their imagination into imagining other spaces as well, and other narratives that we can navigate this. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that throughout your kōrero, you touch on the importance of having a toolkit with you that you take with you, and that you've acquired all these beautiful tools over your years of practice, and how each time you engage with a new community, you're sharing these tools and you're also receiving their tools in return, and how over time this toolkit gets massive and amazing and enables people to share their meaningful stories in ways that may not have been accessible to them in the past. So thank you. That actually brings us so beautifully into our next part-time, our next question that I'd like to pose to you both. Storytelling is such a big part of Te Ao Māori, our culture, but also many other cultures. What are some of the tools that you use to help people tell these stories? I'd like to open up to either of you. Let that percolate.
I don't mind going first if you like. So the biggest tool we use for storytelling in that co-design space, our taringas, our ears, when we're co-designing, especially around stories and the stories the Indigenous stories that we work with, whether it's here in Aotearoa or with Indigenous communities around the globe, it's about listening. We don't go in with a preconceived idea of what the technology will look like. So within Indigenising, we build our own infrastructure architecture, and then we build the content that sits on top of it, but we also build the data models that sit underneath it. So the infrastructure itself follows what we designed, which is called the whakapapa tech stack, which is something that actually starts at the base with whenua, moves through to whakapapa, tikanga, maitaranga, and then te ao matihiko. So the land, the people, the protocols, the knowledge, and then the technology. So when you flip that back around again and you use that from a storytelling perspective, we take the technology piece out of it because it's about listening to what that kōrero is, thinking about what that design might look like, speaking about what that design might look like, and then working forwards from there as to what technology would best suit that particular kōrero or that particular story that we've heard. So yeah, that's the tool that we go into co-design with are our ears, open mind, to be able to just listen, process, and then we start the co-design talking space. But we don't actually have a storytelling framework because every kōrero, every story that we hear is unique, and it needs to be treated uniquely, every time.
Riham, I'd love to invite you to kōrero.
I think in our Palestinian culture, we do have a big tradition of storytelling. I would say the traditional kind of storytelling when there is a storyteller, and we call that storyteller Hakawati. So he is the one who tells, Hakawati, or he speaks. So he or she, of course. But yeah, it's usually someone who's dressed up traditionally and be in the middle and have people around them in the market. And traditionally, that's how theater started actually in Palestine, is by storytelling. And they would tell the story, and that's it. They learn the lesson and then they go home. So that's a big tradition in our culture. And we have actually a theater called in Jerusalem called Al Hakawati, based on that tradition. But me as a storyteller and my tools as a storyteller, as I said, is a little bit more innovative. It's rather than telling the story narratively, I like to do it non-narrative. That's my tools, that's my work. So I usually start, as I said, with the body and with research, with movement, with sounds, with also like going to the community and maybe also ask them for their stories. So like collecting different narratives and different untold stories as well. Is like, how can I incorporate all of these untold stories inside of one big story? So I like to take fragments in a way of information and then see if this fragment and if this other discipline or if this other, I don't know, like happening can come together and tell a story in a different way. So that's my tools. And that's what I think is exciting as well for the new generation to play with. Although I had storytellers coming to my work and coming to my workshops, and I'm always like in conversation with them. So how do you want to incorporate those tools or those multidisciplinary tools in your storytelling in its traditional context as well? But we do have that traditional context, of course.
It's always so inspiring hearing the power of the co-design process and coming to the source of the mātauranga, or the source of the stories, the source of these kōrero, and letting the stories unfold organically and take shape as is necessary or feels right for the people whose stories they are. I wonder, have either of you ever experienced perhaps any challenges bringing people through this journey of the process of creating things in their own stories? And if there's been ever any challenges with trusting the process and letting the story sort of take shape organically?
I would like to share an inspiring, not a challenging story, because I think it's, I have also taken part of another project that is not in Jerusalem, that is in another town called Al-Jarashiyya in Tulkarem. And it was a little bit challenging because I would say it's a more traditional and conservative place for me to be in. To go in, it's like maybe it's one of those villages that is yeah, a little bit more traditional than other places in Palestine. We still have that, but they are still like very lively and open. It's not like they are like in the desert. No, they are in the middle of the city as well, like next to the city. But they have their own traditions. They have their own way of like working with things. They have like 1 or 2 or 3 major houses in that village where everybody knows about, and they have coffee there together. They have celebrations there together, weddings there together, funerals there together. So it's that kind of community that is like very collective. And if you enter one house, then you are like, everybody knows that you are in that house or in that family. So in a way, that was a little bit like I really needed to respect that space and to respect that community. But at the same time, I felt they were so open. So like that was the inspiration for me, is like they were so open that we are there coming with me personally with my theatre tools to there. I worked with 8 young females aged 12 to 15. So they were really young at a critical age. And I was giving them theatre tools about what kind of stories they want to say in their community and where they want to say it. So similar to Jerusalem, but in a different context and a less a provocative way. So I'm like, what do you want to say to your community? And after an inspirational couple of meetings, they came up with an idea that they want to have a space in their community where they can do theater, art, and yeah, like where they can gather as young people to make art. And I said, okay, let's make a story about that, and let's make our play about it. And they did that, and they presented this play in front of the whole village, I would say. And after that, they were asking the council to for a space, and they said, "Bidna makan," we want a space for our creativity. And that person, he said, "Okay, I'm going to give you that space, and it will be in the city hall, and you will have it. And I really encourage you, and I encourage your talents and all of this." So this is also the power of there is a challenge, but there is also the communities, they always, I feel they're always open for new things. And it's just about, spending time with them and being very respectful to them. And they're just they love change, and they like to be, and I don't know, I learned a lot from that experience, because then I had to break a lot of my conceptions about those communities in a way. It's the traditional, actually, no.
Thank you very much, Riham. That's a really cool story to share. Something that's kind of been percolating in my head as I've listened to both you and Amber talk as what I would call bravery. The bravery that both of you have shown in your pathways and in your journeys. When I started, I never imagined that I would get into service design. If you'd asked me as a kid what I wanted to be, it was probably something along the lines of, an actor. I want to make movies, mostly because I wanted to drive the flash cars that they had and wear the fancy outfits that they had. Service design wasn't my pathway that I chose for myself. But I listened to your stories, and I think, Riham, about the bravery that you show in getting people to engage with different forms of art to tell a story. And I think for you, Amber, I think about the bravery that it took from being a wahine Māori and heading into tech. That's not generally the space that we tend to hang out in. So, Amber, I'm really keen to hear from you, and then from Riham, how did you start this pathway, and where on earth did you find the braveness that you have along the way?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate that the Tanya that I co-founded the company with, Dr. Isaac Warlbrick, is really supportive. So when we came onto the tech scene, because I took over as CEO of the company, I was the only one other wahine Māori in the games digital tech industry, and that was Maru Niho Niho, who her company is producing Guardian Maya, which is a cool video game if anyone wants to check that out. So yeah, we were number 2 on the scene that I'm aware of. So it was really challenging at the start to, I guess, find our way and carve out a niche that we wanted to be known for. For me, coming from that commercialization tech transfer space, I had really good networks in the industry. So I knew VC, so venture capitalists, I knew angel funders, I knew to wrap everything we designed in an IP strategy and how to protect that. So I kind of came into the startup space with that knowledge, with the networks, wrapped in advisory board around us from get-go before we even had staff, so that we had that to lean back on. But I guess for me, the bravery came in when we were navigating and working with iwi. It's such a complex situation that you get yourself into when you're building these relationships. You're asking for the elders to trust you with real precious stories and knowledge that haven't really been widely shared. And that to me was terrifying, coming into that space. And yeah, lucky to have Isaac fully supportive, so that we could go through that journey together. And then sitting down and having those discussions, I think that's really where the bravery came in, was putting ourselves out there, going into the environments that we were in with a brand new technology that nobody really understood at the time, and then asking people to trust us with one prototype that we had built, which was the Manu prototype, but trust us with their content to be able to do something awesome with it. Not necessarily the company space itself, but just the spaces that we work in. And then I guess the other thing too for me as the CEO of the company was being able to turn down work that didn't really align with our values. So because we are quite niche in what we do, and we stayed in that on that pathway that we're on, we have carved out a unique space for ourselves. And this is not just a unique space across Aotearoa, it's a global space that we're working in, where nobody else is really playing. But in order to be able to be known and have our brand recognised as leaders in that space, it meant that we turned down a lot of work that really didn't align with our values. It didn't have an Indigenous narrative to it. There was nothing educational about it. So we'd often get asked to create these experiences or do these contracts, and we'd just pass them on to other companies that were more than capable to deliver. It just wasn't for us. So yeah, I guess brave in that space, it was probably those two areas for me.
Thank you. And having sat at a very similar table where, you get work in the door, and and sometimes that work comes with a really big budget, and you're looking at it going, ooh, that that could put a lot of kai on a lot of tables for a very long time. But there's that connect around, but it doesn't align to the values that we have. It doesn't tell the stories that we want to tell. It doesn't promote the things that are important. So I understand that part of the bravery. So thank you very much for sharing that you're part of that story. Riham, how about you? Do you have something where, like watching that video that you shared, I imagine the ability to create space for people to be able to tell stories in different ways that aren't necessarily just about talking about them. They're about, either dancing them or drawing them or feeling them in different ways. So from a bravery point of view, I think it's twofold. One, you're very brave to step into that space, but you're also helping other people to be really brave. So I'm really curious about what that process looks like.
Okay, I'm not sure from where to start, because I think, it's I think one aspect is very personal, and one aspect is also community in a way. It's like I feel like first, the one that is personal, I grew up as a child, or as a talented child, I would say, who's someone who's in her room, dancing and in front of the mirror singing, and always had this kind of like explosion of creativity that wants to go out, but I was very shy at the same time. So I was a very shy person. So being on stage has empowered me a lot and gave me a lot of bravery, I would say. So it wasn't like, oh wow, it's magical, and then I am there and I'm on stage and I can do all of this thing that I work now. But it was like in different trainings and in different work that I have done to let my voice out, to have my presence and to reclaim my presence and to be on stage and to tell my story and to have all of that. So in a way, I feel that when I go and I work with my participants, and I feel the stories that are untold and the things that are preserved. So I have that kind of I'm tentative to this. So wherever I go to communities or in my trainings, I feel like this is my first mission. Is like, guys, I know how it is to be in your shoes. And I know also that people who are like very extroverted and very there's like they have their talents and they don't know how to navigate that. So I'm like, I try to feel that, to give them that confidence, and that I know that by training this comes. It's not like, oh, just talented people have it. It's just those creative people who have it. I believe everyone is an artist and everyone has a story to tell and everyone has their own tools to say. So that's one perspective that is personal to me. But the second is like, we really don't have a lot of spaces for creativity. We really don't have that kind of training. Like, I was not trained. I did my BA in physiotherapy, which is really something not in theatre, but I found myself and I found my path, and I found I found different people, of course, in Synchronicity to show me my way and to show me the path where I am now. But that's part of it, is like, I feel like we lack the spaces, we lack the trainings, we lack all of these potentials. So I feel like I have this, and I have this energy inside me to share this. And whenever I am in educational programs specifically, I like to introduce this way of thinking and this way of like approaching the world in a different way. Yeah, so that's also my rebellious ways. Like, education systems and needs to change a little bit, and how we approach it. Yeah, art is such an important tool, and I truly believe it.
Thank you so much, Riham. It's like it's the kind of what that feels like is both of you are like, you didn't go out and decide that you're going to be brave because, you know, being brave was cool. It's like, actually, there's some things that need to happen. There's some stories that need telling. There's some ways of being that need to be. And so there's a lot of other people in this space. So, and I can do this. This is a skill set that I have, which I think is really awesome. Very mindful of time. We have a couple of questions in our question stack. So if it's okay with you, unless either of you have something that you want to add to the conversation that we've already had, I thought we might go to our questions from our live studio audience. Are we comfortable with that? Nice. Right, so our very first question, Amber, this one's for you. Could you speak about the importance of the embodiment in augmented reality games? Why are physical immersive aspects of storytelling important for you?
The immersive aspect is important for me. Thank you for this question, by the way. Important to what we do is because you're able to provide a visual. So when we hear kōrero, so going back to the way our tupuna shared knowledge, right? You'd sit around, but you'd listen to them telling that kōrero, and you'd see them being able to speak that kōrero. But we don't necessarily have that where we are or in whatever place we are in. And so when I think about what we're doing in that AR space and the assets that we're creating, whether it be the human characters like Manu or the kaitiaki like Kaiwhare or some of the other work that we've done, I think about it as we're putting our taonga back on the land in a digital way. There's a very specific reason why we use the style of animation, or the reason why we use animation and steer clear from the more realistic work, and that's because we don't want what we're creating to replace the traditional look or feel of something that might already exist for an iwi. So for us, it is really about capturing the essence around that kōrero, providing a visual display for it so that people can see it, think wider about it, become curious about the kōrero that's being told, and then want to find out more about it. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, sorry, I was just struggling to unmute myself. That is what a fantastic answer. And I love that, because there's definitely when you're thinking about the taonga, how do we show the taonga without being disrespectful or without, you know, sharing too much. So the concept of a digital version of that is really, really awesome. And I like the idea of, again, hearing the stories in someone else's voice, in the voice of, you know, our tipuna or our, you know, our kaumātua and kuia who aren't necessarily going to be with us forever and ever. Amen, right? So that's also another really awesome thing. Thank you very much. Riham, a question for you. I'm just trying to make my screen go now. I love the example of orange peeling as a powerful symbol. Reminds me of the umbrella protests in Hong Kong. What role does symbolism and metaphor play in your practice, and how do you like to work with symbolism? Oh, good question.
Woo. Thank you for the question. I think, well, let's say currently now I'm working on a new research. That's my current research at in my PhD at the University of Exeter, where I'm looking at different Palestinian artists' portrayals of land and resistance and liberation. And throughout our resistance history, I would say, there were like different periods where there was like different revolutions against the colonial system. Art was as its peak, I would say. So art was always in hand by hand with these kind of liberation or resistance movements. So a lot of posters and images and paintings and songs and films, also theater, was produced during those times. Particularly since I'm a very semiotic person, as you have seen, like I'm really interested about semiotics, like the visuals and the music and all of these sensory experiences. I'm looking at images at the moment, at the image production of those periods, and symbolism comes a lot with it, as the oranges, as different kind of symbols like the sun. I realized there's a lot of sun and yellow, and sometimes in the paintings of the Palestinian artists, because it symbolizes the next day, it symbolizes the day of liberation. We have a lot of eyes as well as in our paintings as well, where actually you paint someone gazing at you or looking at you. There's a lot, because of that, I learned that this kind of, we are looking at the audiences as we are like, you are witnessing us, you are seeing us, and look at us in a way. It's like, look at what we're doing. So there's a lot of symbolism in Palestinian art, I would say, that some of it is revealed and some of it is not revealed. Some of it is known, but some of it is not known, even for me. So I do work a lot with, I would say, images and what's those kind of images and symbols means to me. So what it also communicates to me. So if that gaze is looking at me, then what does it say to me? I try to imagine what these symbols are trying to say to me and to recreate them in a way. Yeah, I hope I answered this question.
Riham, that's fantastic. Thank you. I love. It never occurred to me to connect like the sun with liberation, or the sun being the future, or the next day. So that's a new connection that I hadn't made. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. We have another question, and I think we've probably got time for this question. We're going to pose it to both. I'm going to ask the question, and then I'm going to get Amber to respond first. Also, both Amber and Riham, you can have a look at the question, the Q&A tab at the top of your screen. If you want to have a look at the question, I'm going to read it out, but it also gives you an opportunity to read it yourself, so it doesn't feel like I'm hurling something at you. So the question is, How do you respond to dismissive attitudes towards gaming and storytelling and those who see these mediums as less intellectual and intellectually robust, my apologies, and those that see these mediums as less intellectually robust? I'll get you to start. Amber, what are your whakaaro on that?
So that was how do we respond? Was that,
Yeah.
is that the part?
How do you respond to dismissive attitudes towards gaming and storytelling and those who see these mediums as less intellectually robust?
So for other journeys and what we create, we do, so we straddle three main sectors here and internationally. Education, tourism, health and wellbeing are the three sectors that we sit across. So we actually create EdTech games that are used within our mainstream schooling, and we create learning and teaching resources for our kura Māori. So we are designing educational games in that space. The one instance where I've had a parent who we had met at an event, and she had come up and she was engaging with the game itself, but she was very anti her children having devices. So no tablets, no laptops, or no mobile phones. She didn't find any value for her tamari kids to be able to learn on those. Once we took her through the process and explained the underlying education or knowledge that the young whoever's playing it are learning, she did a complete 360, and she actually emailed me. I've still got the email about 2 weeks after the event that we met her at, and informed me that she had brought the kids iPads because she could see, or she brought an iPad for both her kids to share, but she could see the value in them being able to not only engage with a digital device that is going to become mainstream, but to have educational content that resonated with them. They're non-Māori, but the content resonated, and yeah, she just found value in what we had created. So I guess in terms of any negative impact that the gaming industry has, some of that is well deserved. We are a very value-based company. So what we design, we're all about ethical game design. We purposely design games where there's you can't buy yourself to the top of the leaderboard. There's no fighting in the games that we design, and the games that we design aren't designed to start hitting those dopamine levels. So we try and avoid the addictive side of games, which sounds really weird because that's, you know, how game companies make their money. But we actually work with a lot of the professors and researchers who work on the addicted gaming, and mainly in the gambling space as well, who are looking at research in that space. We're taking that on board, contributing and going, well, okay, how do we make our games less addictive? How do we make them the content really educational focus, but how do we keep that engagement as well? And I think that's really set us on a different pathway to other companies in our space, because we're not looking to get people addicted. In fact, one of the games that we're about to launch, well, we're not about to launch, it won't be launched till next year, it shuts down on whiro. So our in the Māori maramataka, it's the dark moon. So the sky's black. It's a time where they suggest you stay home, you wananga, you reflect, you spend time within. So we decided, because our games are geolocation based, they're designed to get you outside and get you moving. Well, what does that look like if we actually shut that game down on that moon phase, and see how that looks from a health and wellbeing perspective? So we're always looking to challenge the status quo, and see if we can actually design better and really, I don't know, I guess set an example for other game companies out there that we don't have to always focus on this addictive gaming model that a lot of people focus on, and how do we actually create and design better so that the game industry doesn't have that bad rap.
That was possibly one of the best answers I've ever heard, Kari. Thank you very much. The idea that I hear you, I understand what your concern is. Let me help educate you, let me change your mind through education. And then, right, now let's work out how we can do better and how we can apply our Indigenous knowledge, Mātauranga Māori, to the way that we are making games. Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah.
Riham, do you have something to add to that, the question about how you respond to dismissive attitudes towards storytelling and those who might see these mediums as less intellectually robust?
I think by inviting them to our processes would be my answer, rather than shutting them away or like ignoring that. We have to do what we have to do. This is this is my work. This is what I do. And I have like a very simple story of a transformation that happened during our sharing in Jerusalem with the performance in public spaces. It wasn't about dismissing the idea intellectually, but it was more like, what are you doing, guys? So we had like a couple of guys who are like young a little bit and who are like troublemakers, I would say. And since we are doing the performances in the streets, so like we didn't expect what kind of public that will join us. So they came, and while the young lady was like dancing and doing like things in her with her movement and her body, they were like started to like make jokes. And for me, rather than really dismissing them, I was like, do you want to know what we are doing? You know, would you like to join us? So that was a moment where we all felt like we actually want them to be there, because we chose to be in the streets, and we chose to be in the spaces, and this is a way for them as well to be in part of our work, rather than just like not invite them. So they were like, so what is this? So I said, like, this is theater but outside, you know, like just come and join us. There will be different plays, and you can see, and you can tell us what you think by the end. And actually, they were with us from the beginning until the end. And in each performance, they were like, this is beautiful. Oh, wow, this is great. And then they really felt included and part of the conversation, rather than just like, oh, this is just something happening in the streets, and these are like aliens to us. So my answer would be like, do what you want to do. You have to do what you want to do, and take all the measurements. But at the same time, like if they still don't want, like, just invite people, you know, to your work, and it's their choice if they want to be part of it or away from it. So yeah.
That's, again, another fantastic answer. So rather than, you know, getting upset, rather than kind of fighting, it's actually helping them to embrace, to be involved, inviting them into the process, and helping them experience it as well. What an awesome answer. Thank you very much. All right, team, we're pretty much on the home stretch now. There is another question, but I worry that we're not necessarily going to have the time. So what I'm thinking is that we will send this question to both Amber and to Riham, and we'll ask them to reply to us, and we can include that alongside the video when the video of this webinar comes out. So we're going to wrap up our session. What I'd like to share, and then I'm going to ask Lucy to do the same, and also for Lucy to close us with a karakia, is so storytelling. It's a way of teaching. So what I've learned from our kōrero today is it's a way of teaching. It's a way of bringing around self-awareness. It's a way to help people to experiment, to learn different ways of communicating. Storytelling is about sharing history and making connections. So I think about the thing that you said, Amber, around, you know, showing people the awa as it was when our tupuna looked after the awa, and the impact that had. Stories need to be told. They need telling. And some of our stories are beautiful, and some of our stories are breathtaking and inspiring. And they create a longing for what was and connection. But some of our stories, they pay homage and they tell stories for our ancestors and they tell the beautiful things that we do, but also some of our stories tell harrowing stories, and they are ugly stories, stories of unkindness and things that have happened in the past that have caused harm to other people. Because we are capable of both of those things, right? And storytelling for us is a way of making sure that we never forget the beauty that we are capable of or the harm that we can cause. So we can't shy away from any of our stories. We have to tell them all. And I think you both have found ways to tell beautiful stories, and stories that aren't necessarily as beautiful, but in ways that self-educate, help people to self-realize, and help people to reconnect with history, with whakapapa. And I think those are really, really wonderful things. Lucy, did you want to add anything on to that?
Absolutely. Just again, another massive mihi to the both of you for sharing your stories and sharing the stories of people who have entrusted their stories with you. There's great power in holding stories and holding space. It resonates particularly strongly for me in both of your kōrero, how treasured stories are, how they are taonga and they need to be cared for in appropriate ways. And through being practitioners, you have these toolkits that allow you to care for and to slowly tease these stories from willing storytellers in meaningful and mana enhancing ways. But also something, I have a ping pong brain, so I always get really excited and I can never ever contain everything into all of my thoughts all at once, but something that really speaks very, very strongly through both of your discussions is the importance of storytelling as a connection to place and space, and how through having space, if we create space that may be cultural space, that may be physical space, that may be emotional space, but if we create these spaces for people to share their stories in trusted ways, we create a vibrancy and almost like a hub around these stories, which then in turn breeds community. And it could be the thing that weaves community together that had been fractured, or that pulls new people back into a new community. And so storytelling, our performative arts, and through kind of thinking through design, we are able to really galvanize community around storytelling and really, I guess, empower them to realize that the power of their own stories. There's so much joy and so much strength and so much courage that comes with being able to tell your story, particularly on a stage, but in any kind of publication, telling your story or helping another tell a story is brave mahi. I will nip it in the bud there. And another massive mihi to the both of you, but also a huge mihi and thank you to our wonderful audience for tuning in this evening / this morning / midday or midnight, wherever you happen to be in our wonderful world. It's been wonderful to have you in this holding space with us, and we're grateful for your attention. I know that we have a very exciting new wānanga coming up in August of next month, and I'll pass over to Keita to mention a few little notes about it.
And as much as I would love to say what our next wānanga is, I've been so focused on this one that I've completely forgotten what our next wānanga is. Thank you, Lucy. But what I will say is, whatever we are talking about, it will be awesome, and it will involve very, very passionate panel members, and we'll have some really, really koi questions, sharp questions to ask them that will invigorate kōrero and help us to learn more about it. Aroha mai koutou mā. I'm a little bit embarrassed because I was so focused on this one that I forgot to write my notes on what's coming. I'll hand back to Lucy to do our karakia whakamutunga.
Kia ora, Keita. Also, if you want any more information on this wonderful series, you can find that at our wonderful website. It's probably the place to go to get the dates. So I would just like to officially close our wonderful kōrero. Thank you all for holding this space with us today. And in the spirit of Matariki, I'd like to share a karakia whakamutunga with you. Manawa Maya te pūtanga o Matariki. Manawa Maya te ariki o te rangi. Manawa Maya te mātahi o te tau. Ka rangahia te tau, poroakitea te tau, te hautapu ki te rangi, te hauora ki te whenua, matariki e, tai ki e. Nui koutou.
Tai ki e kare, thank you.